Welcome to the CGDC Community Spotlight. Today I have my friend Raul Rivera joining me. Raul's a father, he's a studio owner, he runs the CGDC Speedgame, and he's been a longtime community contributor. Raul, welcome.
Hey everybody. Thanks, Brock, for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah. It's so awesome to actually get to sit down and speak to you face to face. We talk a lot on the Pixel Pug Discord server and chat and debate and talk about different things in the community and publishing, but we don't actually get to sit down and chat.
Yeah, so looking forward to today's chat for sure.
Like I said in your intro, you've been part of the CGDC community for a long time and contributing in various ways, like the speed game. How did you get plugged into it?
So the CGDC is my first connection with them was back in, let's see, the first event I went to was in 2016. I think I had plugged in with maybe certain elements of the CGDC through the Christian Coders Network, the CCN. Before that, because I was participating in like speed games challenges and in their speed art challenges as well, which I had on the site, just doing quick concepts or sketches within a certain amount of time. Before that, there was this one site called Guide to Games, which is also another Christian website that did like reviews for games, movies, series. So I think I had probably connected with some folks of the CGDC through these different sites, but I never was able to go to the conference until actually 2016. And it was kind of like a dream come true, Brock, because I had known about the CGDC since early 2000s. So this is a time when, I'm in high school. I'm discovering all kinds of things, right? And finding music that I like and trying to connect with folks and trying to see, okay, so I like a lot of this kinds of music and like a lot of these kinds of games I like to play. And I have this passion and this dream for wanting to make games one day that glorify God in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
To make Christian games, right? That's such a term, right? That's so loaded because people wonder what makes a Christian game, right?
Totally.
But I remember looking online, seeing if there's anything like it, and I found out about the CGDC. And I was like, okay, that's really cool that there's actually a conference for folks in the industry who also happen to be people of faith. And so I always wanted to go there. I just was never managed to until like 10 to 12 years later. And so there was the process was very long and involved a lot of small steps. And so one of the first big collaborations I had with the conference itself was through the community game, and this is with Chris Murray. He had reached out to me to help out do some of the art for Gates of Mansell, which is one of the first community games that they did. And at this point, I think we had interacted a little bit through the speed games on the Christian Coders Network. And so he had seen some of my work, some of my concepts, and then we just kind of got the ball rolling from there. And yeah, rest is history.
What attracted you to speed games? Like, why is that important?
So I have these game ideas. It's first one started back in early to mid 2000s. This project I started called Flames of Abathos. It's an RPG, a strategy RPG. It's inspired by games like Shining Force, and other tactical games like Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy Tactics. But it's definitely more Shining Force leaning. And because I tend to approach things from a world building sort of point of view, I enjoy the process of coming up with the story and the characters and building the world from the ground up. And I started like figuring out, how do I draw, because I was not the best artist then. I'm not saying that I am now, right? But I'm a lot better than I was then and now. There was a process of trying to figure out, how do I envision the things in my head on paper, and how do I bring to life these ideas that I have. So a few years later, I started working with Game Maker. So at this point, it's like Game Maker 6 or Game Maker 7. I started doing these tutorials and just trying to learn how to make games in Game Maker. Now, I have a background in computer science, C++,
Okay.
and I didn't finish that mainly because was I was slowing down with regards to some classes, like the math classes, the calculus classes, the pre-calculus
Hmm.
statistics. They were killing me. I love the programming classes, but the math classes,
Yeah.
I just couldn't get through them. I ended up switching from a computer science degree to a game design degree at another school,
Oh,
and
cool.
that just kind of helped me follow this path of I enjoy coding, but at that point in time, I wanted to do something more artistic, more visual,
Mm-hmm.
and so shifted that. Uh, and so throughout this time, I'm trying to build out some of these ideas that I have, and I'm
Hmm.
trying also to learn how to do these ideas, how to execute them. So the speed game, the way it comes in is that it gives me a format, a limited amount of time to test an idea out, to see how much have I learned,
Hmm.
in terms of all the practicing I've been doing, the tutorials and all those things. I have a short amount of time, a short block of time to kind of pull together all my resources, all my ideas, my knowledge, and try to come out with something. So I enjoyed that challenge.
Hmm.
And in 2014, that was the first speed game that I actually joined. I did this action RPG called Warrior. That's the working title. And I remember I had about 2 weeks and a half because I joined the challenge a little bit late. I had 2 weeks and a half to make the game, and that was one of the moments where I pushed myself like I have never pushed myself before. And I did the concepts for the characters. I did the drawings using GIMP at that point in time because I didn't have Photoshop. I animated the
Right.
characters by actually drawing each frame. Then I drew up the enemies, and then I did the tile work, did the art, did the coding. Some of it I had to kind of come up with it on my own. Some of it I adapted from the things I had been learning. And I came up with
Hmm.
this project that it didn't have like a complete like a bow kind of end, right, where I've tied it up nicely.
Uh-huh.
It ends pretty abruptly, so I never submitted it for that reason. But I basically finished that project. Um,
Yeah.
and that's kind of, it gave me a taste of, okay, I have what it takes. I have it in me. And I enjoyed the challenge. I enjoyed the pressure. Okay, let's see how I can take this now and run with it next year. And so
Mm.
after that, I just kind of took off, and uh, again, I enjoy the process, right? The
Yeah.
challenge, and it's very inspirational, very motivational.
Hmm.
And so I've been trying to participate as much as I can until becoming now the coordinator.
Hearing you talk about it, it kind of reminds me of back in drawing class in college. There was a point in the class where we were learning to do gesture drawing, and it feels a lot like in my mind to that, like where you're having to sorry, that's what
No problem.
it feels like that, where it's that exercise of getting comfortable, working really fast and loose, and that becomes like the bones of the actual drawing later if you choose to take it there. I really like that. I've never participated in like a speed game or much game jam. A lot of that stuff kind of became popular later when I was already doing stuff. So I miss that, but I see the value of it. So what would you pitch people for CGDC's Speed Game Challenge?
Um, on why to
Like,
join?
why should they get involved? Yeah,
Yeah,
like why
okay.
should they do it?
So one, it's fun. It's really fun. It's an opportunity to try out maybe some kind of idea that you're challenged by, or maybe you're trying to proof out a mechanic on whatever main project you have going on, and you can take the speed game as sort of a small side project with a limited amount of time. Let's test out some ideas. Let's test out some mechanics and see if we can get them to be fun, to be juicy. And then if it works out, okay, you've proofed out that idea. Now bring it into your main project. Maybe you are tired of your main project because you've been on it for
Yeah,
so long and you need a break. Okay, the
yeah.
speed game gives you a few weeks. There's the classic mode, which lasts for 3 weeks, and there's hard mode, which is kind of like a Ludum Dare format, so it
Mm.
lasts just a weekend. Um, So if you are tight on time, 72 hours, what can you bring together? And so yeah, it's again, it's an opportunity to test. For those of you who are learning, it's an opportunity to
Mhm.
test what you know. For those of you who are more experienced and are veterans, it gives you an opportunity to uh, do a small prototype of an idea that maybe you'd like to implement later on another project.
So let's circle back to your education. So you started in computer science, transitioned to game design degree, um, and then you got that degree. You finished that
I did.
program. Okay, and then at some point, I know you went on to do a master's,
I did.
right?
2 masters
Okay, what
actually.
was that in?
So I have a master's in graphic design and
Okay.
I have a master's in divinity.
Oh wow,
So
two
that's
masters. Okay.
yeah. I used to joke I'm a lifelong student. I like learning.
Yeah. Have
Uh,
you ever taken the Gallup Strengths Finder?
I have not. What is that?
Okay. It's one of those tests where it tells you your strengths and stuff.
Okay.
So, my number one strength is an achiever, but my number two strength is a learner, and I'm guessing that you have that pretty high on you as well.
Oh, interesting. So it reminds me a little bit of the Myers-Briggs test. And
Hmm.
I've done
Hmm.
that one as well. So um, that's interesting. I'll have to check it out. Yeah, looks really intriguing. I'm intrigued by it. I
So
probably
two
yeah.
masters,
Yeah.
and how have they contributed to your journey in game design and development?
So the master's in graphic design was an interest in continuing exploring other facets of design in general.
Mhm.
So game design, right? We design games and all its facets and what it means and takes to be a game designer. And then the graphic design. So I love typography and I
Mhm.
love
Me too.
logos and
Yeah.
logo types. And so I love studying them, looking at them and trying to build them my own. And
Yeah.
I freelance for a bit doing logos and graphic design. So the masters in graphic design was an opportunity to kind of explore that angle of design, right? That
Mhm.
world of design and study some of the masters. And try to solidify some of the ideas and the concepts that I have with a more professional uh, angle, right? So I did that, and then a few years later, I did the Masters in Divinity, and the idea there was to explore from a more theological avenue play.
Hmm.
What is play like in theological
Yeah.
terms, and what is play? What does play have to do with my faith?
Mm.
So I've always had these. I've always displayed these leadership traits. So in church, I grew up serving, um, leading different ministries, preaching, a lot of different avenues, right? Where people started seeing that I have these pastoral qualities, right? I
Yeah.
care about people and I care about where they're going and what they're doing and how to for them to be the best people that they can be, right?
Yeah.
And then that's on one hand, and on the other hand, I have this idea, this passion for games, right, and what games can be. Ever since I played Super Mario World, right,
Mm.
Super Mario Brothers actually on this original Nintendo, and watching my parents play, and all of us gathered around the little gray box playing Mario, and then just exploring this world, right, and seeing what this world was like. It 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 fascinated me to no end. And
Yeah.
to kind of complicate matters in a way, right? I say I use that word loosely, complicate. So I'm an army brat. So for those who don't know, that's somebody whose family is in the military and they travel a lot, right?
Mm.
So every 2 to 3 years, here we are moving to a new place. So I have almost like this wanderlust, right? This
Yeah.
zest for life or discovery. So between video games and then between visiting new places, new realms, and meeting new people, these came together. That church service, right, and that pastoral role, so to speak, and then that
Mhm.
discovery and that sense of looking for something and pathfinding. They came together, and I was wondering, so how do I live out these callings,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so the MDiv was an opportunity to explore that. what does it mean to bring together these two things, right? Leading and shepherding people, but also designing games and using
Yeah.
games to bring joy and life and direction and guidance to people, from all kinds of genres, right? Or I think games of all types have strengths and different purposes that can be exemplified in different moments in time.
So, what did you discover about play in your MDiv time? Like, how does play fit into God's world?
So the term one term I discovered was theologology, right? The God
Mm-hmm.
who plays.
Yeah.
I find fascinating that when you look at Eden, Eden is like a sandbox. So God puts Adam and Eve in this sandbox, and in no uncertain terms says, "Go play," right? Name the animals, keep and till the ground. So you have this space. I want you to do something with it.
Yeah.
Uh, when God says, "Oh, there's beautiful stones in the earth and these kinds of like gold and I forget what other beryllium I think he mentions different kinds of precious stones, right? So God is pointing out there's different things in this garden. There's just this one tree. I don't want you don't eat from it, right? Don't eat its fruit. But you have all these other things. Do something with it. And to work, right? To keep, to till, to which involves right taking care of and exploring
Mm-hmm.
how do I bring the most out of this ground, out of this earth, out of these plants. All of this involves a process of discovery, and it also involves a process of play. You have to kind of be a little bit
Mm-hmm.
playful, right? You kind of
Yeah.
have to make mistakes and just kind of fiddle with things, and you're figuring it out, you're finding things, right?
Yeah.
And so we have this big old sandbox we were put in to enjoy and to enjoy it with God. And after the whole fall, right? When we get locked out of Eden because of sin, and the whole world goes to the crapper, so to speak. Uh, when you see it, uh, every culture has some element of play.
Yeah.
uh, Play is innate in humanity, and not just humanity, animals, right? Animals
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
play to learn how to live, basically,
Yep.
right? To follow their instincts, to hunt, to care for their young. Children play, the whole cops and robbers, cowboys and Indians. That's older than time itself, right? Um, but not only that, right? With play, you learn your roles in society, and you figure out your skills. What are your strengths? So there's an aspect of play that is meant to bring things out of people,
Yeah.
and because of our fallen state, right? There's negative aspects that get pulled out, but also there's a sort of divine spark, right, in us because we are all born from the breath of God, right? As God breathed life into us, there's there's a good aspect into that can be
Yeah.
pulled from, and so it's our job as Christians, right, to help people to see that, to see what is it that Christ sees in you, and
Mm-hmm.
how can we bring forth that best person, and play is a good example, a good way of doing that.
What kind of games are you making, and how is your faith being expressed in that process?
So there's three major projects that are in various stages of development. And then there's a series of smaller projects which are meant to proof out ideas
Mm-hmm.
and kind of get the studio going, so to speak, put it on rails and get it going, and be able to build up then towards those larger projects. So there's a long term strategy and there's a short term strategy. The past few years, it's been figuring things out, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a one man studio, because I can't hire anybody yet, right? There's a lot of things that I have to figure out on my own. And then with that being said, because I love to learn, I love the challenge, and I love the process of making. I have no problem just wanting to do multiple things, even audio. Right? I I'm not a musician. I love music. I used to play drums at church. I like to fiddle with the guitar when I can. But I'm not a musician. I'm not a trained musician. But even then, I have no problem recording small clips of
Mm.
voiceovers or audio coming from a guitar or even a keyboard, and just using that because it's a nice creative outlet, but it's also a way of exploring other areas of development. But when I can, I try to lean on people who have greater strengths than my own, and then bring them in to cover those spots that I can't cover reliably. So the past few years, there's been a long process of learning how to do certain things,
Mhm.
how to develop a methodology, a process. There's been important elements of that I've been able to gain through working with Gabriel Del Santo. He's from Pro Indie Dev. So he did a course called Finishing Good Games That Sell,
Mm.
and it's a full course that teaches how to leverage the different areas and phases of development of a project, the marketing phases, and the idea generation phases to get a project out and to get more reliable results than if you followed like a process that didn't involve a certain degree of professionalism and
Sure.
detail oriented.
Mhm.
So, and that's probably like a minor plug there, not
Yeah,
intentional,
yeah.
but um,
It was helpful to you
it
then?
was helpful. It was
Yeah.
helpful because, and I'm one of the guys that I'm again being a stay-at-home dad, right? And at that time, I was studying at school still, finishing up my master's, and then I'm also trying to figure things out. The
Mhm.
process is slower; it's a little bit more drawn
Yeah.
out.
Sure.
Uh, but I've seen some guys there that produce some projects and have gotten them out using that
Yeah.
methodology.
Uh-huh.
Um, some of those games named are there's Blasphemous, there's I think it's called Before We Leave, I think is the name of the game, Sam Barham, and there's a few other projects. So I've been taking a lot of what I've been learned there, and it's been helpful because it
Mhm.
helps me to see my own process. Um, where are where are my strengths as a designer, and where are my weaknesses, and where are areas that I can kind of strengthen, build up a little bit better, and then
Yeah.
what are the things I just keep running with. So it's been eye opening. It's been educational because I then see things in a different light.
Mm.
Things that I may have not understood completely in the past, I understand them a lot better now. For example, marketing, right? So I used to always
Mhm.
think of marketing as, oh, this is the thing you do after you've made a product.
Right.
In our case, a game, right? You do marketing
Yeah.
after you've done the game. No, the marketing starts the moment you start making the game, because the marketing involves the surface of your game, the name, the graphics, the genre, who your character is, all those little details, they all compose the marketing.
Mm.
Promotion is when you start reaching out to outlets, journalists, websites, streamers. That's the promotional part. But the marketing, you got to start thinking about marketing when you start making the game. And so that was never clear to me in the past because I've never heard
Mm.
it in those words. And
Yeah.
again, I don't have a marketing background, right? So it's little things like that. Then they start tweaking the way I'm thinking about
Mhm.
the project. Okay, so all that said, coming back full circle, right, to the projects that I'm working on. So I mentioned I have three major projects, and then several smaller projects, which are sort of tactical small games, because the idea is that these small games are going to build up towards these larger projects that I have.
Okay.
Um, there's Flames of Abathos, which I mentioned earlier as a strategy RPG. I've had it. I've been building it and designing it, and I've done some concepts and some art of it for 20 years almost now.
Well.
The idea of that game is that there are these flames that represent the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And so
Mm.
the Burnerknights, and this is what my studio is named after, Burnerknight Studios, the Burnerknights are people who have been called by God for a given purpose in this world.
Mm.
And so the flames that they can burn at will represent the different types of gifts of the Holy Spirit. So Flames of Abathos explores that whole concept. And actually, you can kind of see my logo here.
Oh yeah.
with some of the
Mhm.
main characters of the three major projects. Um,
Yeah.
so that's Flame of those. There's Project Starsoul, which is inspired by classic Fantasy Star.
Hmm.
This one involves more sci-fi
Okay.
concepts, and the original idea was born actually from a speed game. So 2019, I believe it was the speed game challenges. One of the verses involved when Paul speaks of the what was written long ago, right? The
Uh-huh.
scriptures. It was meant to point to God in very specific ways, right? And we use that text, that writing, to help us, to guide us, to lead us closer to Christ. And so I got that idea for Project Star. So where okay, what if we have these types of scrolls that have been lost, or some of them have been lost. They have to be discovered. Others are in possession of certain people where they're trying to keep them safe because these scrolls contain the blueprint for life, basically, life in
Hmm.
general. Um, Not just surviving right in this world, but also how to make certain things, how to create certain things. A blueprint for architecture, for finances, for leading a just life, moral, ethical life. And so I interwove into the story this idea of um, utopia that then
Hmm.
became a dystopia and is working its way again, once again, to utopia.
Huh.
So that's kind of the major arc of that, and it's also an RPG. Then there's a Nine Heart. So Nine Heart is more sci-fi, cyberpunk inspired.
Hmm.
So inspired by Ghost in the
Nice.
Shell, Akira.
Ooh. Yeah.
Um, there's concepts from Universal Soldier in there, Terminator, RoboCop. So it's a lot more, a little bit more hardcore in its
Yeah.
dynamics. Action RPG, and the concept is that the main character Alice, she one day awakens, right? She awakens and realizes that she is in an artificial body, and she has been for over 20 years. And
Hmm.
so she's being used as a weapon of war, and she needs to discover what happened. Why am I in this this android body? Where's my real body? And where's my family, right? And that kind of sets her on this journey to discover this this sort of oppressing and tyrannical force in the world that is meeting head to head with this sort of legacy that has tried to free the world through its own means,
Hmm.
but both are failures, right? Both are coming at each
Hmm.
other. Both are failures because they are ignoring the true one principle, right? That there is one God, and it is God who is going to right the wrongs of the world. It's not one ideology over another. So it's a little bit more heady in its thematics in terms of
Yeah.
technology, artificial intelligence. Where does the human soul reside, right? Is it in the body? Is it in the mind? Is it in the heart? Um, yeah, so that's kind
Wow.
of like the those are the
Yeah.
big broad strokes of those three main projects. Um, as a studio, some of the games that I'm interested in making, I mentioned RPGs.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of survival horrors, so games like Resident Evil, an
Hmm.
exploration of biotechnology used for wrong, and several folks who are trying to survive the horror and help people and save people in the face of so much adversity. Um,
Yeah.
I enjoy adventure games, platforming, and those are one of the main type of projects that I see myself making, and some of the games I've made already
Yeah.
are along those lines. To a
Hmm.
lesser degree, I am interested a lot in real-time strategy as a personal fan, and I'd love to make RTS games one day, fighting games. Yeah, that's kind of like a small stroke.
Those sound super cool. Also really ambitious.
Yes.
Where are you? You said you also had some like smaller kind of feeder games.
Yeah.
Are you working on the smaller games at the moment?
Yes. So
Okay.
there's Altered Temples, which is a survivors like, and it's meant to
Mm.
introduce players to the world of Nineheart. You do
Nice.
play as Alice, who's the main character. Um, and this one adopts all like the tropes of the typical survivors, like so think Vampire Survivors or
Yep.
20 Minutes Till Dawn. That's Altered Temples. That one is in development. Then there's Bio Nemesis, which is a 2D top-down survival horror game. And it's meant to kind of flex my muscles and explore what it's like to make a 2D survival horror game.
Uh-huh.
Um, there is Project Ember, which was originally going to be a introduction to the world of Flames of Abathos. And then Project Star Soul has a Gauntlet version. And the Gauntlet version is meant to be a roguelite package of Project Star Soul, smaller
Hmm.
scope. You have several characters, and the idea there is that your experience is currency. So rather than level up in traditional ways, when you defeat a monster or something, you gain the XP, and then you use your experience points to buy the stats. So you can kind of customize how you build your characters. So Project Star Soul, the Gauntlet version, Project Ember, and Altered Temples are three projects that I've been working on and off for the past 5 years. So I
Hmm.
mentioned the Speed game back in 2019. That's where
Yeah.
Project Star Soul got its start.
Okay.
About 2 years later, I started building out the Gauntlet version. So at this point in time, I had just moved into Unity. I had been with GameMaker Studio 2 for several years, and then I moved to Unity to kind of explore a new engine, grow as a programmer, so start working with C Sharp,
Hmm.
and also just to open up opportunities in terms of seeking contract work. Not a lot of people use GameMaker Studio 2, except for small indie
Sure.
outfits, and those
Hmm.
that do aren't really hiring. But from what I found, a lot of people are using Unity. So
Yeah.
actually, learning Unity back in the fall of 2020 opened up a lot of opportunities to work with other
Nice.
folks. I worked with Defiance, Tom Essential at Defiance,
Yep.
with Chris Skaggs at Soma. I worked with George Zietz at Digimancy Entertainment, which
Mm-hmm.
he's one of the guys. He worked with Neverwinter Nights and a few other big studios, Wasteland 2, Wasteland 3. So I think it was the folks at Obsidian. So that was a great opportunity too to kind of connect with him. And incidentally, the point of connection between me and Digimancy was a mutual friend of mine who I worked with on Project Star Soul as part of a
Hmm.
thesis project over at
Oh, yeah.
Bethany, which is the seminary where I studied. So it's only how God used all these little connections to
Yeah.
kind of put me into
Yeah.
different places and to grow as a designer and developer and just to meet people. Um, so Project Star Soul, the Gauntlet, I started working on around 2022, which is kind of revamping what I started back in 2019, but also again another opportunity to how much have I learned in Unity? Let's
Hmm.
put it all together into this package. And then Altered Temples, I started later that year around summer. So this is after Vampire Survivors just took off. 20 Minutes Till Dawn was just released. I was like, okay, this seems like a really interesting genre that's just coming out. It's
Yeah.
fun. I wonder what I can do with it in a cyberpunk package, but then use it as a springboard for
Mm.
building out the world of Nineheart, which I've been
Yeah.
writing story elements about it. I've been doing concept art on it for years. Let's start
Hmm.
putting in some game package and start working towards that bigger um, project. You mentioned ambitious, right? The way I
Yeah.
envision Nineheart is
Uh-huh.
is if somebody put together Metal Gear Solid, Mass Effect, and Resident Evil. So we're
Oh,
already
wow. Okay.
talking. This is a project that's probably 50 million, 100 million easy, right? That's going to be an enormous budget. It's going to need an enormous team, probably several years of development. If I can get there one day, that'd be amazing, right? I think I have to show some cred, right? I have to build up towards that.
Definitely.
Um, if in the case that I can't, right? Well, then the next best option is okay. Well, I could probably build out smaller elements of it using AAA engine, like maybe Unreal, learning Unreal one day, bringing a few people on board, and then just build out small slices of the game, and then build up towards the bigger game. There's a strategy, but I'm trying to find the what's the shortest route to get there. And
Yeah.
so, big ideas. I think that if I build up little by little, I can
Yeah.
get to where I need to be. Um, So yeah, so I've been building out these smaller projects over the past few years, and at the same time, I've been figuring out how to do certain things, right? Learning Unity, learning how to make certain things happen, how to build out certain mechanics, and then bring it together with my world building. So in the winter of 2024, I joined this game dev boot camp. And this is, again, by the same guy who did FGGS, Gabriel Del Santo.
Okay.
He did Finish a Game boot camp, right? And the whole idea is to finish a game within a set amount of time from end to end, following alpha, beta, and wrap up, which is the polish phase of the game. And I thought to myself, okay, so I have these projects I've done in varying degrees of polish, and there's a lot of learning that I've also had to kind of do and undergo as I've been building them. Let's see if I can then take something even smaller scope, put in some of the principles that I've been learning in FGGS at a smaller.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like saying FGGS on rails, basically. That's what the boot camp is. It's on rails. So okay, it's on rails. I can then review, what have I learned? Did I understand it correctly? Is there other areas I can strengthen? Okay, and let's come up with something that I can finish end to end, polished. Now we're not just talking at a really short or like a really abrupt ending or something. No, we're talking about something that's a little bit more juicy, better polished, that feels like an end to end experience. Can I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I challenged myself. I took the boot camp and I came up with this really simple, short idea. You have this infiltrated character who's been hired to steal a vial from a major pharmaceutical corporation, right? Very Resident Evil inspired. Your character has to go in, they can take this vial, and now they have to escape. So the game puts you directly in the escape sequence. Okay, you're at the end. I have the vial. Try to find the exit. So it's a short 10-minute experience, end to end. And that's where Bionemesis was born.
Okay.
The project is my most advanced to date in terms of what I put into it,
Mm-hmm.
development wise. It's also my most polished project to date, where I add a lot of post processing effects, interesting mechanics, and just kind of brought together all these years worth of like figuring things out and learning,
Mm-hmm.
um, and putting it together there. And so
Nice.
I felt confident with the project that I'd like, okay, I think there's something here.
Mm-hmm.
I did the boot camp a second time in January to kind of build on the successes of the first boot camp. I expanded the game a little bit, expanded its gameplay potential, and its value proposition. Right. So where originally it was a 2D survival horror game, uh, now it's a 2D survival horror game with Metroidvania elements. So now the complexity increases a little bit. The gameplay opportunity for players to discover and do new things is greater now. And so it's this project that I am working on releasing here soon, like say April.
Cool. April.
Yep,
Okay.
I'm in the process of refactoring all my code. Um, I am in the process of expanding now the gameplay and the world, and still trying to keep it small scope and so finishable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Finishable. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
And just trying to really restrain myself from adding too many things that then exorbitantly increase the cost of development in terms of
Yep.
time, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and so I'm looking here to ship, right? Now I've shipped games in terms of free games and browser playable games, all on my itch.io profile. This is an opportunity to ship on Steam, put
Mm.
everything I've learned together, make a game, put it on Steam. Whether the game's sales or not is that's not my main focus because I'm in it for the long haul, right? I want to
Mm-hmm.
build up what's called that long tail of
Yep.
releases because ideally, eventually, I hit a game that actually does really impact the market. People love it, they buy it, and then they might be interested in buying my other games. So then
Yep.
that's the whole idea, right? So Bionemesis is a smaller piece on this road towards building something bigger and bigger. I just have to learn how to ship and then
Yep.
consistently ship.
Yeah. We got to build that shipping
That's
muscle.
right.
It's So important. You got to get those reps in.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've really been doing it too.
Yeah.
So,
Hard work. That's for sure.
yeah. So I want to end with two questions, and they may be related, they might not be, but two questions. One, what's the biggest obstacle you're facing now? And two, what's God talking to you about?
Mm. Okay, so that's really good, right? I think that the current main obstacle is definitely finances, right?
Mhm.
So I've had to divide my time a lot in terms of seeking part-time work, contractual work, and then finding ways to support my family. So my wife she's the main breadwinner because
Mhm.
um, her job is a lot more high paying by far. My ideally, right, I find work or I get my projects to pay enough that one day I can support her. And in the case that she can't work, I can still support her, right? And she can take a step back and breathe, right? So she's a registered nurse. I recently got her what do you call that? So APRN license. So no, she's a nurse practitioner, which is a lot better. And it's ideal for her, right? Where she's at a point where she's put in the years as a bedside nurse, right? And work with different types of units like emergency, trauma, etc. But now, she's at that point where, okay, I can do something that's a lot less physical now because it's been a long
Mhm.
time, right? It takes a toll on your body, especially as a nurse.
For sure.
So she's happy where she's going now. She's recently got a new job here, in trauma as an APRN. So she's excited about that and the opportunities that it's open. And so for me, it's been a slow process getting to where I've envisioned where I could be, right? And so
Mhm.
I want to support my family and I want to make a way with these projects, with these
Yeah.
games. And so um, the finances has been hard, right?
Mhm.
There's been moments where things have been really tight. My wife has suffered an
Mhm.
injury, or where some of it work related, some of it not work related, and I've seen how God has come through. God has
Yeah.
definitely come through in different moments and has provided work for me to do that then covers us for a set amount of time. Um, God just opens doors, right?
Yeah, he does.
And so one of the things I've been praying is like, okay, I want to move into this full time. I want to see if I can get in this full time and move away from the hobbyist sort of work. So yeah, move away from more hobbying and more professional, right? More
Mhm.
consistent. And so I have that to a certain degree, but not enough. And so I'm wondering, can I do this full time? Am I able to move into this full time? Maybe, maybe not. If I can't, okay, then I find something to do on the side, and then I work on these projects little by little and kind of build up. It's a little bit slower process.
Mhm.
Um, but if I find enough runway to do this full time, okay, then I can kind of start, knocking each project out. I can bring in contractors then who I can then do. Oh, help out with the audio and music. Maybe help out with the level design. Maybe help out with the writing. Maybe help out with the voiceover. Start bringing in other people, and that's my ultimate vision with Burnerknight Studios. I don't want
Mhm.
to do this on my own forever.
Yeah.
I definitely don't see myself becoming a 30, 50, 100 person studio either. That seems dangerous because I don't want to close down in 5, 10 years, right? I make a few games and then I close down. I see Burnerknight Studios going into eternity. That's my utmost goal. Where this is not just a name on a paper incorporated with the state that then I enter into bankruptcy one day. I'm not interested in that. No, I'm interested in longevity, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Whether or not I'm doing this as a career path, I see myself making games until the day I die. Much as the
Cool.
writer writes until they can no longer
Yeah.
write, the poet makes poems until he can no longer make poems. The filmmaker films until he can no longer film. Like as a designer, as a developer, it's a part of who I am and how I see the
Yeah.
world. Uh,
Mhm.
I'll be making games until, yeah, I move into heaven, right? And or the new heaven and new earth, and we're still making games, right? That's my goal. So one biggest obstacle, I think, is the financial part, right? Is finding that balance between being able to do what you love and getting paid for it, or being able to do what you love because you're making products and assets that are continually generating revenue that give you the runway to do that and other things, hopefully, right? Because then it's dividing. If not, then it's dividing my time between different things, and it takes longer.
Yeah.
The second thing. So, what is God telling me? I've shared with a few folks how I've had this sense of digging ditches in the desert. I've dug a lot of ditches. My family's dug a lot of ditches, right? And I'm reminded of that text in 2 Kings, I believe it's chapter 3. I think it's verses 16 to 17 or 16 to 20, where God is telling one of the kings of Israel is that, dig ditches in the desert because although you won't see wind or rain, the wells will be filled up, right? Dig wells in the desert, so to speak. So there aren't any signs, perceivable signs, but the wells will be filled up. And so I've been sharing how I have this sense where it just kind of clicked one day to me, and it just hit me. It's like, oh, this is a lot like I've been digging ditches. I need to find out where is this located in Scripture. Where is this? Because I feel like I've heard it before, and that's when I found the text. Thanks to Matt Cologne, right, who shared the text with me. I've had that sense. I've been digging ditches. I've been digging wells, and I have this sense and this faith that God is going to fill these wells with water. And there's been other instances in my life, right, where God has showed me that your granaries will be filled with grain. That need, right, or the lack thereof is something that God is going to provide. And so I'm in that sense of waiting. I'm moving, I'm working, I'm acting, like I'm seeking things, but at the same time, I'm also waiting in the Lord for God's provision and God's blessing. The other sense is, and this one is in Isaiah, and I think it's chapter 56, when God is telling, I forgot who, to expand their tent, right? Expand your tent. Spread out the curtains from end to end, because there's this growth, right, that's going to happen. And so that sense of I need to expand my tent, right? I've not yet placed, okay, what is the tent? Is it my home? Am I expanding my home? What does this mean? What does this mean in terms of what I'm doing right now and what I'm seeking, what I'm praying for? There's something there, though, right? There's something there. It's not revealed itself yet, but I do see that God here is working with me and working with something, right? And it's prepping me, my family, for whatever's next. And to end this, one verse that I've always lived by is Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And I have found how I've been able to live out that verse in so many different ways that I just continually trust God. I continually trust God. Sometimes it's almost to my, I don't want to say to my detriment, but more so that it makes me slow acting. I move slowly because I'm waiting, right? I'm like, should I move here? Should I make a move here? Should I wait? I don't know. So God's been teaching me to, sometimes I do have to move out in faith, right? Do things and move out in faith, and not just to stand still the whole time. But with that stated, right, there is that sense of, Psalm 23, like the Lord truly is my shepherd, because I have seen God's provision in so many different ways, protecting me, my family, providing for me, being present with me, being there for me. And there's so many instances in my life where I've seen that God has been there, right? And truly has been shepherding me, leading me by still waters and laying me on these green grasses, right? So that's kind of one of my life verses, right? Lord is my shepherd.
Amen. That is so good. And I look forward to seeing what that means for your family, that increasing.
Yes.
I can't wait for you to be able to share that. So if people want to follow your work and what you're doing, where should they go?
If you go to Burnerknight-Studios.itch.io, that's the link where you can play some of my games, and you'll find also the different game jam games that I've done. So there's the speed games at the bottom of the page. Again, varying degrees of quality and finish. And then there's the tri-jam games, which are, interesting enough, 3-hour jam games. If you thought you can't make a game in 3 hours, trust me, you can. And people have been doing it for years now. It's actually impressive. And then a low-res jam that I collaborated with a few folks. So there's that as well.
Oh, cool. Will you be at the conference this
I'm
summer?
hoping to, and I'm hoping to bring my whole family this time.
Oh,
so
sweet. That's so cool. Yeah. So if you're thinking about coming to the conference, come hang out with Raul and his family.
Yes, please.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Raul.
Thank you.